Okay, recording has started. So today we will be like dealing with some issues which come up during classification or supervised learning in general, and how to solve them. So over the last few lectures, we have come across several algorithms for both classification and regression. So just to remind you, for classification, the different algorithms which we have come across are as follows. These are, first of all, KNN, next decision trees, then after that we talked about logistic regression, and in the last Wednesday we also talked about the Bayesian classifier or naive Bayes classification. Okay, and in case of regression, we talked about linear regression, the regularized regression, which includes ridge regression and lasso. And we also talked about like how decision tree can be used for regression. So since decision tree can be used for both classification and regression, it is sometimes known as CART. C-A-R-T means classification and regression trees. Okay, so now when we are dealing with any supervised learning problem, so one issue that frequently arises is the issue of overfitting. So I think this I had mentioned, like in the intuition of overfitting I had told you earlier also. So like if you consider the analogy of a child learning some or a student learning to solve some problems, overfitting is basically when you have been given some worked out examples to understand and like learn a subject, you just end up memorizing those examples themselves. That is what is overfitting essentially. So like when you are given some like practice problems, you are expected to like see a few of them, try to understand the or grasp the concepts, try to understand how those problems have to be solved, and then the remaining worked out problems you may actually try solving yourself and then telling your solution with the given solution. That is like that is the way I guess most of you would have studied, say for example during preparation for your JEE. But suppose there is one student who simply memorizes all the worked out examples that have been given to them, right? So if someone, so what is the problem of behind that? The problem behind that is of course that if they are given any problem which so if they are in the exam, if they are lucky that one of those problems which they have memorized that comes in the exam, they will be able to write it down perfectly. But if any other problem comes which is even slightly different from any of those problems, then they will not be able to do anything because they have not memorized it. So like this overfitting is basically that only. So like just to give an example, so suppose we have got a regression problem. Okay, so let's say our data set, data set on which I am training is somewhat like this. Okay, let us say this is the training data set. Now, for example, let us say that this point I keep aside, that I am not going to I decide to hold this aside as my validation set. So, what is validation set? This I will explain to you after like in a minute. But let us say that as of now, I see that these are the 3 points. So now what I do? What I do is I think that okay, these are the 3 points. So I end up fitting some kind of a parabola to this, like this. Okay. So what happens here? This parabola, of course, fits all these 3 points perfectly, and there is absolutely no error. So we can say that I have these 3 solved examples I have memorized perfectly. If you are if the in the validation or training or testing phase, if one of these points come, I will be able to give the perfect answer. There will be no error at all. But the thing is, like in the when we come to the validation phase, we are asked like it is this point which shows up, right? This point. So now so you can, as you can see, that my prediction for this particular point is going to be somewhat here, even though the actual value is here. So I may end up making a big mistake here, epsilon. So this is a classic case of overfitting. So so now let us see a bit of more on that. So like here we are looking at some lecture notes by Professor Sudeshna Sarkar, so who is the head of our center. So these these are some of the notes that were prepared for the AI Shiksha platform from which you are doing the assignments. So like if in case you some of you may have noticed that that contains some recorded videos also, as well as some lecture notes, the PDF files. So these are some of them. So so now typically when you are like, how do you understand whether you have overfitted or not? So so what was the problem with this approach? The problem with this approach is that that is like you are of course given a training set. So given the training set, what you like that is what is wrong with what you tried to do? You are given a training set. This is the training set you had, so you wanted to minimize the error on the training set. So that is a there is nothing wrong in wanting to minimize the error on the training set, right? So what you did was you chose that function which minimizes the error on the training set, right? But then now the problem that is now, given the hindsight that this is the data set and not this, then what do you think is the mistake we made? I mean, at that time of training, we knew that the data set was like this, but actually the data set is more like this, right? So, of course, you did not know that at the time of training, because that this point was not revealed to you. Only these 3 points were given. So what? So that's why you fit it. But what do you think was the wrong with that approach, or why? What else do you think I could have done? Anyone wants to answer?
We could have, instead of trying to fit it into a very high degree polynomial like this, we could have stuck with something a little more simpler, maybe like linear regression itself. And we
Yeah.
might not have obtained 0 errors, but I think that would have been better.
Right. So of course in hindsight it is like we can understand that it is really a linear function that we should have chosen. That's a correct answer what you have given. So so in general that is if we try to generalize your statement, what we will what we are hinting at is that going for a complex model which perfectly fits the training data is a bit risky proportion. That is, of course, we want to minimize the error on the training set, but if that involves creating a very complex model, then we may think twice before doing it. Now, what do I mean by a complex model? A complex model is such a model which has lots of parameters. Complex model basically has lots of parameters. Okay. So so what are all the parameters involved in this model? So first of all, as you can as you can understand that this is a this is a polynomial. So like any polynomial function, that way it can be written somewhat in this way, right? A0 plus A1x plus x cubed, etc., etc., up to APXT, right? Where P is the degree of the polynomial. So that means what? That means whenever I am coming up with any kind of like any polynomial function, so what are the different parameters involved in it? For the first and foremost is the P itself. That is what degree polynomial to choose. And then comes the other questions, that is what are going to be the A0, A1, A2, etc. So these are all the various parameters of the model of the so now what you are, so in this case I have chosen a parabola which is like a 2-degree polynomial. So like so obviously P is so that is I have taken this decision to take P equal to 2. Similarly for A0, A1, A2 also I have just, that is I may have put in some values, right? So so that is like one so basically that is the issue of the overfitting. So that is the one way to prevent overfitting is basically to reduce the model complexity, in other words to minimize the number of parameters that we have. So first of all, how do you understand that whether overfitting is happening or not? So a characteristic of overfitting is this, that is you keep on making the model more and more complex. That is, for example, if it is a decision, so in different kinds of algorithms, that is classification or regression algorithms, model complexity may mean different things. Like I mean, in all cases, it means the number of parameters, but it manifests itself in different ways in different algorithms. Say, for example, in case of decision tree, the height of the tree is the number of nodes, the different criteria. Those are all the parameters of the model. In case of regression, the parameters are what I just showed you, right? So the complexity of the, so as we increase the complexity of the model, we will see that the accuracy or the performance on the training set increases. Like it initially increases very fast, then the increase becomes slow, but it keeps on increasing until it becomes like almost perfect. So that is the model, it will become maximum perfect. That is to say, in case of a classification problem, the like it will be, the error will be 100%, and in case of I mean the classification accuracy will be 100%. In case of regression, the mean square error will be equal to 0. If that is, we have learned the when we have been able to come up with a model which perfectly fits the training data. But when that happens, like it may also happen that if you consider that in the testing set, the testing, the accuracy or the RMSE in testing, we see that as you keep on increasing the model further and further, initially the testing accuracy also rises, then it starts stagnating off, just like the training error. But while the training error never falls at any point, but the testing error actually starts falling beyond a particular point. Why? For this reason. That is like here, as I was telling earlier, like as I make the model more and more complicated, the training error will keep on getting like becoming close to 0, but the testing error may become quite large. So like if instead of going for this complex model, if I had gone for a simple model, say for example the linear model, then like if you consider only the training phase, my error would have been like I would have incurred some error. Like this much error, this much error, this much error, which is not small, but okay, like but some error I would incur. But in the testing phase, maybe I would incur a less error. In this case, what is happening is that as I make, this is a simple model, and here this is the complex model. So as I move from the simple model to the complex model, as you can see, the training error decreases, but the testing error can go up beyond a point. Initially, to a certain, like till a particular point, the training that is the testing error will also reduce, or the testing accuracy will also increase. But beyond the point, the testing performance starts breaking off. Why? Or at what point this like the testing performance starts falling? It happens at that point when the training, I mean when the training data set or the model is no longer representative of the testing data set. That is, both the training data set is, I mean that it is expected that the testing data set is not very different from the training data set. I mean, if the training and testing data sets are very different from each other, then obviously we will never be able to get any good performance with any model. That is to say, if you have studied physics and then you will be asked in the exam questions on philosophy, then no wonder how well you have studied physics using whatever like whichever best books you have read or whichever best teachers you have gone to, you will still not be able to answer the questions based on philosophy, because your training set and testing set are different from each other, are fundamentally different from each other. So it is expected that the training set and testing set will roughly come from the same master distribution, but but the training set will have its own may focus on certain topics more, and your testing part may focus slightly on that on other parts a bit more. So it may happen that like during your training, when you are training for the JEE, maybe you focused on mechanics and thermodynamics a bit more, while in the when you came for the exam, there you saw more questions from, say, these optics or electromagnetism and so on. But nevertheless, if you have picked up the theory enough, then even if you in the training set during the training phase you did not see enough examples related to, say, electromagnetism, you should still be able to do a reasonable job, okay, in the test. So that is basically the whole logic behind it. But the problem here is that how do you understand that you are overfitting so that you can take some corrective measures? So the testing set is not something that is revealed to you at the time of training. When you actually go for testing, there, even if you understand that you are not doing well during the testing phase, there is nothing nothing that you can do about it. That is, your training is already complete, that is, your model is already there, you cannot change it at that point. So what we usually do to prevent this kind of overfitting is that we keep something like which we build something known as the validation set. That is to say, the training set you divide it into a into a training set itself. So instead of calling this as what you get for a training set, let us call this as the labeled set. This is the set where you have the like all the labels are available. Now this, instead of using the entire labeled set as the training set, let us say that you keep aside a part of it for training and the rest of it for validation. Okay. So using the, now you let us say that 80% of the data you use for training and the other 20% you use as validation. So this validation is like taking a self-test. That is, you have got 100 problems of physics, 80 of them you study, you see the solutions, you you understand the matter, you train yourself. Then the remaining 20% you actually you force yourself to answer the remaining 20 questions without actually seeing the solutions, and then actually evaluate your solutions with the given solutions and mark yourself. That is, you consider something, these validation tests, as something like a mock test. Okay, that is, you answer these questions in a testing mode, but you are assured that at the end of the test the results will be revealed to you, so that you can take remedial measures as necessary. So like typically people use 80% of the data set of the labeled set for training and 20% for validation. But the question might arise that which 20% and which 80%. I mean, it may happen that that is like whatever 20% you are choosing for validation, that should be like a representative. That is to say, it should not happen that there are 100 questions in your in the book, and I mean to say 100 solved problems in the book, and you choose the first 80 of them for training and the rest 20 you choose for validation. But the last 20 are from the chapters on, say, wave optics or modern physics, relativity, etc., while the 80% which you have studied are from mechanics, thermodynamics, electricity, magnetism, hydrostatics, hydrodynamics, etc., etc. So if that happens, then this exercise is going to be futile, right? Because again, there is no overlap between your training set and your validation set, right? Is the validation set same as the testing set? No, the testing set is something on which you don't have a control. The testing set is revealed to you like after the model is built. That is, on the testing set, the its performance is tested, but that is, even if the performance turns out to be bad, the model cannot be retrained like for that purpose. So you can say basically that like the training set is like your worked out examples, your validation set is like your mock test where the solutions will be given, and the testing set is the actual JEE exam. Okay, so like there in the testing set, the performance of the model is evaluated by us, but not by the learning algorithm. So to avoid this issue that the training set and the validation set are completely disjoint of each other, what people do is k-fold cross validation. What does that mean? That means the entire data set is divided into k parts. The labeled data set divided into k parts. So k minus 1 parts are used for training, and 1 part for validation. Now, which one part is kept to be kept aside for validation? That is done randomly, and that is done, and this whole procedure is done k times randomly. That means what? That means at every time one part like one of those k parts is kept aside for validation, and the training is done on the remaining k minus 1 parts. Then in the next round, another of these k parts is kept aside for validation, and training is done on the k minus 1. Then in the third round, a third part is kept aside for validation, and the rest used for training, etc., etc. So in each of the cases, you will get some parameters, and that is and you will also be able to assess the performance of those parameters using the validation set. So that way you will be able to decide which parameter set is optimal. Okay, so in each round, estimate parameters. So basically you are doing this whole process k times. In each time you are getting one set of parameters. So basically you have got k sets of parameters now, and also for each of those parameter sets, you know how they perform on the validation set, right? My screen is not visible. Can't you see my screen? Yeah.
It is visible.
It is visible. Okay, so if anyone is not able to see it, it's probably a network issue. You may try leaving the meeting and rejoining. Okay, so basically you are getting k different sets of parameters. In each case, you also know what is the corresponding performance on the training set as well as the validation set. Okay, so whichever parameter set gives you the best performance on the training set as well as the validation set, you can choose that set of parameters. So this you can choose, like from this you can choose the optimal parameter set. What do I mean by optimal? Like means it will do well not only on the corresponding training set but also on the validation set. If that so accordingly you have to choose your parameter set. So this is one way in which this is a general way in which we try to avoid this issue of overfitting. So just like there is overfitting, there is also something known as underfitting. So this is an example which we have already seen earlier. So this is like that is we have a problem which could have been solved with a simple linear model with less parameters. But if I end up building up a function like this, then like this is a highly complex function which will give you perfect accuracy on the training set, but you will get into trouble maybe in the validation set. So like that you can see in case of like here overfitting comes in. Now, yes.
So you have to apply interpolation for that.
So I mean, what you apply, that is up to you. Interpolation is something which you may apply, but if you apply interpolation, it's possible that you will end up getting something like this. But then, as we saw earlier, this is not a good idea because it overfits. If you go into once you go into the testing set, you will validation set, you will find that overfitting has happened. That is to say, you are not getting good result. Now, just like overfitting can happen, there is something known as underfitting. That is, you end up fitting an overtly simple model, even though maybe a slightly more complex model was warranted. Say, for example, if you go for this model, this is a simple linear model, right? So if you go for this simple linear model, then it's possible that when you go for the validation set, then you find that these are the validation points, so that you see some some amount of error creeping in. Now this error may be less or more than what would have happened if you had gone for overfitting, but this suggests that what you have done is underfitting. So if you are seeing underfitting has happened, then you understand that you have to make the model more complex, a bit more complex, but not so complex that it will overfit. So we'll have to go for a model of intermediate or optimal complexity like this. So this model, I mean, it is neither as simple as a linear model nor as complex as a piecewise polynomial as this is, but maybe this is some intermediate a polynomial of intermediate degree. And so like here we see that this is able to get good performance like both on the training set. So here you can see that it has done well on the training set also and in the testing set also. So that is why basically in the initial phase, in the initial states, we are getting low accuracy. That is because of underfitting. That is when we are choosing some very simple models, then we are not being able to capture the complexities of the data. But as I made the model go more and more complex, so that underfitting was gradually solved and I was able to get good performance. But when I made the model more complex than some threshold, then we saw that it is beginning to overfit. Okay, so very simple model underfitting, too complex model overfitting. So how exactly or where to draw the line? At what stage should you stop? There is no clear answer to that question. But use of validation set, the way I mentioned, that helps. Okay. That is like if you see that none of the like for example, if you have validation sets like this, and we like after doing k fold of cross validation, you find that you like even with k different sets of parameters, you find that still you are not being able to get a good accuracy on the on either the training set or the validation set. Then you understand that okay, so this class of models or this algorithm is not good enough. So like then you have to understand that you need a better model. So maybe in that case you may decide to just drop this algorithm altogether and try a different algorithm. So maybe like you had been trying the Bayesian classifier or naive Bayes classifier so far, and even after k-fold cross validation you find that you are not being able to achieve a good accuracy on even the training set, let alone the validation set. Then you will have to understand, okay, then probably this naive Bayes classifier is not enough for me. I have to go for a more complex model. Maybe we have to try logistic regression or something like that. So that is one general this is a general practice of dividing the labeled examples into training and validation sets. Other ways are with the algorithms themselves, you may sometimes tweak the algorithms in certain ways so as to reduce the overfitting. Okay, so one way of doing so is through regularization, a concept which we already are familiar with. Right, so for example, penalize large weights in linear regression. So we have already seen that when we did ridge regression, so one reason why we chose to do, so if you remember, like when we were suggesting, or when I suggested that you look for a model where each of the weights are as small as possible or close enough to zero, then some of you answered that to prevent overfitting. I gave you a different reason at that time. I gave you that because the like if there is a small change of noise, then I mean if there is a small change in any of the features, then that will end up getting reflected in your predictions. So so that is one answer. The other answer is simply overfitting. If like that is to say, if you have some large weights on in case of linear regression, then you like I mean what I just said, the feature the error in the feature measurement, that itself is an like is not unrelated to the question of this to overfitting, right? So basically going for regularization in case of regression or also for classification. I mean regularization is a concept which we have so far seen in the context of regression, but it can also extend in the context of classification, as we will see next week. So so like if you go going for regularization usually helps if you are able to build a model that so what regularization does is basically it gives it
Sir, you are
Sir,
not audible.
sir, please make one present us, sir. Sorry, attendees, sir, attendees.
yeah, fine. So yeah, so what I was saying is that this regularization is one, like apart from using the validation set, that is this use of validation set to identify parameters is a good practice. Apart from that, the models themselves we may sometimes tweak in various ways as to reduce overfitting. So one way to do that is with the help of regularization. That is the regularization basically helps you to achieve what is known as or that is to say, it helps you to enforce certain structures on the data on the model which you want. Now, like one such structure which you may be interested in is low model complexity. That is to say, you may be able to force the algorithm to come up with a model with less complexity, that is to say less number of parameters, if you use regularization. Say for example, we already in case of lasso, what happens in case of lasso? Lasso basically enables you to build a sparse model. Sparse model means what? Means many of the parameters are zero. That basically means that you like it's a simpler model with less complexity as it has less number of parameters. Most of the parameters, by saying that most of the parameters are zero is just another way of saying that like several of the parameters have just been discarded. So the model like lasso is an example of how we can use or we can choose a simple model but through the process of regularization. There are other examples also to follow. Now let us come to these very important concepts of bias and variance. So bias and variance are two issues which arise when you are building any kind of a prediction model. So bias is a kind of error that is caused because your model could not really represent the concept. So bias is basically it's a symptom of underfitting. Okay, so like underfitting is like the actual disease, meaning that the model which you are proposing is not complex enough for the data, and its symptom is bias, which means that whatever that is to say whatever value you are predicting is off target from the value from the true values. That is called bias. So here are some examples of models which have high bias. So these are typically some less complex models. For example, linear function or a decision tree with low depth. That is to say, maybe only a decision stump. Or say, for example, important features missing means, for example, a very sparse vector. That is, in case of regression, if you are going for a sparse model is generally good, but if you are going for such a sparse model that even for the important features which actually matter, there also the coefficients are set to 0, then what happens is, then basically you have gone for an overly simple model. That is, maybe only there are capital D number of attributes, but out of that you have like D minus 1 of them have 0 coefficients and only one of them have a non-zero coefficient. So basically you are making the prediction on the basis of only one attribute. So that's a case of underfitting, and it will manifest itself through bias. On the other hand, there is variance. So variance is what? Variance is that the exact opposite thing which I just said. That is, if you change the input slightly, you will see a very large change in the output also. That is to say, the variance, as you can already understand, variance is basically a measure of dispersion. High variance means that there is a high amount of dispersion. Now, dispersion of what? Dispersion of your predicted value. If you change this, so high variance usually means if you change the input slightly, that is that causes a large change in the output. Okay, so the variance, as you can see, so variance is the error caused because the learned model reacts to small changes in the training data, and high variance is happens when you go for a overtly complex model. Say for example, you are going for too many features with high weights. An example which we have already considered for study as a motivation for ridge regression. Similarly, if you go for a decision tree with large number of nodes, or if you go for a high degree polynomial for a regression problem, then in all these cases, this problem of variance may arise. Okay. So we will go. So here is an intuition of what bias and variance may look like. Say for example, these green things is these green values are what you have predicted. Okay, and these orange is the set of the true values. The true values should lie, let us say, within this particular circle or particular radius. Now these green values is what you are predicting. So suppose in this case there is low, you can see that there is low bias because all the green values are close enough to the orange values, the true values, and there is low variance also because all the green values are always close to each other. Okay, this is the ideal case of low variance and low bias. Now here what happens is low bias but high variance. Why low bias? Because like the predictions which you are making, many of them are actually overlapping with the true values in the range. Even those which are not too far away from it either. I mean to say there are some errors on this side and there are some errors on that side. But if you consider the mean of all the predictions, it will probably coincide with the mean of the actual values. So that's why there is low bias, but there is high variance. So as you can see that your predictions are all over the place. The predictions are not agreeing with each other. Okay. Similarly, this is a case of high bias but low variance. Low variance because the predicted values are all close to each other. There is not much change in the predicted values, even if there is a change of, even if for the features are changed, but all the predicted values are quite significantly away from the true values. So this is a case of high bias, low variance, and then of course this is a case of high bias and high variance. Right? So like you will have in different situations or like for different training algorithms or different choice of parameters, any of these can happen. But what you really want is this: you want low bias and low variance. Okay, so like the general rule is that the complex models will have low bias but high variance. The simple models will have high bias but low variance. So you will have to find the sweet spot somewhere, a model of intermediate or optimal complexity. So like as I earlier said, low bias, high variance, this is basically this is usually associated with overfitting, and high bias, low variance, this is usually associated with underfitting. Okay. So you will have to find something which is in between overfitting and underfitting, or something which has like where you are getting the best of both worlds, that is low variance as well as low bias. Okay. So this is the like what we actually want to achieve. Now in many cases, in case of many training algorithms, it is not even possible to achieve this kind of a trade-off. That is, you may never be able to reach a balance between that is, you may never be able to minimize both the variance as well as the bias. Why? Because bias and variance are fundamentally opposed to each other. Okay, so that happens because of the problem called bias variance trade-off. We are often forced to make a trade-off between bias and variance. So for that, let us look at this particular piece of mathematics. So let us say that you have so this mathematics is borrowed from Wikipedia, but you can understand that this easily. So y is like, let us say that this is a true level, that is to say that the actual level, not what you predict. So let us just say that there is some unknown true function f, along with it some random noise is added. So these are combined to make make the actual prediction y. So as we know that in our training phase we are given a feature vector x, and I try to map it to y by building some kind of a function. But let us say that there is a true function which we do not know. So this true function f is never revealed to us, but let us still say that there exists such a true function such that it takes it predicts y by operating on the input vector xi and by adding some random noise to it. Of course, we do not have access to f. We don't have access to either f or epsilon. We have only access to x and y. And using that, I come up with my own function, which I call as f hat, which is the predictor function. So this predictor function is again learned from some data set. Now that data set is only a subset of the actual set of data. Right, so that is whatever data set is given to us, based on that only I will have to build my function. But the data set may not be actually representative of the entire domain of data on which the true function can operate. Right, so the data set I will get only what is given to us. it may be limited in various ways. So if especially if the data set is small, then common sense tells us that we will not be able to build a predictor function. Why? Because a small data set may not be able to give us an optimal number of examples, right? So so like here, let us go for the let us basically try to quantify the error that comes in when I make the prediction. So what is y is the true level of any given data point. Okay, and what is my predicted level? My predicted level is of course given by f hat. So corresponding to the feature input feature x, whatever prediction I make, that is f hat, that is my predicted level. So here what I am doing is that basically for let's consider a regression problem. I am considering this error between the mean square error between the actual value and the predicted value, and I am taking the expectation over this. Expectation, why expectation? I mean, where is the randomness involved in this? The randomness is involved in the data set. That is whatever, like I assume that the function f hat which I have learned is basically a random function. Why is it a random function? It's a random function because it's basically it's learned on the basis of a data set, and it's that data set which is random. I mean, there are infinite number of points on which could have served as my data set, but actually whenever we learn any function or we run any machine learning algorithm, that is done on a particular data set. That's basically a snapshot of the of the entire possible data set. Right. So if you remember in your exam, in the first exam, the like in the first question, you were most of you were asked things like like for any point that is you are given a range and you are told that the input points can lie anywhere in that range, say from -9 to +9 or something like that. Right, most of you got such a question, and many of you just took a small subset of that data, just some examples of example points from such a data, and measured an error only with respect to that example. Right, so that was not a good idea, because whatever results you get or whatever error you report is a function of only that data set which you have chosen. If you have chosen some other subset of then you would probably have got a different result. Right, so that is but in most cases, in most practical cases, that's what actually happens. That is, you cannot consider all possible data points, so you consider only a small subset as your data set, and you build your predictor algorithm, whatever it is, that is to say the function f hat, on the basis of that small data set which is actually chosen randomly. So that is why I say that this function f hat is a random function. Even if the way you estimate that function f hat is not random, say for example when you are going for decision tree or k nearest neighbor, there is no randomness in it. That is like you have a clear deterministic algorithm, that is you will measure the entropies of different features, you will choose whichever feature has maximum information gain and you will go ahead with it. There is no randomness involved, but the randomness comes because of the data set. So that's why I say that f hat, that is why I consider f hat as a random variable. So I am going for its expectation. Expectation over what? Expectation over the data set. Okay. Now this y can be written out as f plus epsilon, as we have already said. Now let us so this is what the expression for the error becomes. Now let me introduce, since f hat, as I said, is a random variable, it will have its expectations also. So I bring in the expectation of f hat, like add and subtract the expression of f hat into this, and I get this is what it becomes. So clearly these two terms can cancel out, so this equality holds. But now what I will do is I will rearrange these terms, and I will write out the like the formula of a plus b plus c whole square. Right, so I take f minus this expectation of f hat, this as one term, then this epsilon, this as another term, and the rest that is expected value of f hat minus f hat, this as the third term. So this is my A, this is my B, and this is my C. And these are the, so this is A square, this is B square, this is C square, and these are the 2AB, 2BC, 2AC terms. Okay, so now you like, I will leave it as an exercise for you to work out that all these like, or most of these terms actually cancel out to 0. Okay, and finally you are left with only this kind of an expression. So this expression, let us come to this expression directly. These like you have to do an exercise to find out. So this is basically telling you what? This is the f, the true value, I mean the true function f minus the expected function. This is a true function minus the expected function. So like when you take them, like you consider the error, and this term is basically known as the bias. So what is the bias? Bias is the difference between the unknown true function and the expected value of your predictions. If f hat is your predictor function and you take an expectation over that, so basically it is the expected prediction which you will make for a particular data point, and this is the actual expected value of that data, which or expected output of that data point. Now what is this? This is the expectation of this like epsilon square, and this I may call as the so what is epsilon? Epsilon is the inherent noise in the system. So as I said earlier, this y, the true level is like the actual or the optimal function plus epsilon, where epsilon is the random noise. So this epsilon is basically, it's an inherent noise in the system. So even if there is a true function f, the actual label, the true label is not exactly equal to the true function. It is the true function plus the natural variability of the system. So the variance of that is this thing. And then we have another variance term. So what is this variance? This is basically the variance of the random variable called f hat. Now what is f hat? F hat is my predictor function. So this is, so like if those of you who know statistics will understand that this is an expression for variance. So so variance of f hat. So the first term is talking about the bias of f hat. The third term is talking about the variance of f hat, and the middle term, this is talking about the natural variability of the system. So whenever you make any error in your predictions, that comes from three components. One is from the bias, that is to say the f hat which you have chosen, it may like the predictions which your predictor function f hat makes may be generally or off target. That is like away from the expected values of the output. So that's a bias in your predictor. Then there can be a variance of your predictor also, which means that for a small change in output, in input, your predictor predicts different things. So that is another source of this error. And finally, there is this natural variability that this you cannot do anything about. But so f hat is like so this term and this term depends on f hat. So that means what? That means the error which you incurs is basically your bias plus your variance plus the natural variability of the data of the system. Now that is, of course, if you can minimize both the bias and the variance, then you will be able to reduce your the total error itself. So that is the ideal thing which you want, but oftentimes that is not possible. You may have already, that is to say, if you are fixed on one particular training algorithm or one function class, say for example decision tree. So that is, if you have already decided that yeah, I am going to solve this problem using decision tree only, then it may happen that you will never be able to optimize all like both these terms together. That is, you will either like you will always have some bias, or you will always have some variance, or it's like, or you will always have the same error and that is, but whether you have more bias or whether you have more variance, that you may be able to decide. Okay, so there is a so there are some constraints which which naturally creep in. Now, suppose if for certain reason you are interested in, like you think that you can minimize the bias by yourself, but you need help in minimizing the variance. Okay, that such a situation might arise. In that case, if your target is, or if your priority for whatever reason is to reduce the variance, then you can go for something known as ensemble classification. Now, what is ensemble classification? Ensemble classification is basically the idea where instead of going for having one single classifier, you go for multiple classifiers, somewhat like k nearest neighbor. So in case of k nearest neighbor, what happens is that you have different, you are considering different neighbors. Each neighbor is predicting one label, and you are basically like combining the predictions by the different neighbors by using some kind of a weighting. That's what happens in k nearest neighbor. Now, the same concept happens in case of ensemble classification also. So instead of considering multiple neighbors, let us consider multiple classification algorithms. It's possible that one of them is a decision tree, one of them is a logistic regression, the another is a is k nearest neighbor, or it may happen that all of them are belong to the same class of models but with different parameters. Say decision tree number 1, decision tree number 2, decision tree number 3. Once so like on the same data set we can build multiple decision trees, right, by splitting the in one particular order, or by using certain thresholds for splitting, or maybe trees of different depths and so on, right? So the same algorithm, using the same algorithm called decision tree, we can come up with multiple classifiers. Similarly, you can have different classification algorithm, k nearest neighbor algorithm, one with k equal to 1, another with k equal to 3, another with k equal to 19, another with where such a KNN where all the neighbors have equal weight, another KNN where that is the weights of the neighbors are proportional or inversely proportional to their distance, and all kinds of things. So basically, the whole idea is that you build many you build many classifiers using one or more algorithms, and then each of those classifiers you will use to make a prediction on your test point. And how will you combine those predictions? Based on weights like this. So each of those classifiers which you will design will have their weights, and you will like basically just like you have done in case of nearest neighbor. Again, if for every label you will see what is the total number of weighted vote it is getting. So if like these are the 3 different labels for a particular problem, and these are the 6 classifiers we have along with their weights. So then what we will see, we will compute the total weighted vote each of the class labels has got. So for example, y equal to 1, these 3 classifiers have voted for y equal to 1, and the sum of their their weights is 17. 7 plus 5 plus 5 equal to 17. Similarly, y equal to 2, this label has got votes from 2 classifiers, f3 and f6, and the sum of their votes is 18. Similarly, similarly, y3 has got a vote for only one classifier, and its weighted vote is 7. So in this case, although the label y equal to 2 gets votes from less number of classifiers, but the weighted vote it gets higher, so you go for. So in this case, your prediction is 2. Okay. So the question might arise, so on what basis am I giving weights to the different classifiers? So in case of KNN, you know what basis you are giving. Yeah, I know it's past 12, so so those of you who have to leave may leave, because the recordings are will be available anyway. I'll just take 2 more minutes. So those of so in case of k nearest neighbor, we know how the different examples are given different weightage. In this case, when we are considering different classifiers, can you suggest how we can give weightage to them?
Based on their performance on the validation set.
Yes, exactly. That's a good idea. So it may happen that these classifiers have been trained on different on different training sets. But what we can always do is that we can keep a particular a common validation set on which all of these classifiers are going to be evaluated, and I will check their performance on that validation set. So whichever classifier does well on that validation set, like they will get higher weight. In other words, these weightages may be proportional to their performance on the validation set, on the common validation set. It's possible that each of them were trained separately using some different data sets, and they may have got some classification accuracy on their own validation sets, but that should not count. What should count is their performance, their relative performance on the on a common data set. Okay, so on a common validation set. Okay, so so here we will stop today. So we will see, in tomorrow's class we will basically see an extension of this idea of this concept of ensemble classification to see three different algorithms using which that is which basically use this concept of ensemble classification. Okay, thank you.